Hello and welcome to the new and improved version of Who Doesn't Have a Podcast with me, Dan, and my lovely esteemed colleague, Jerome, aka Susan Triad. Say hello, Susan.
Hello, Susan. It's lovely to see you all, folks. As Dan has mentioned, Monsieur Priestley is not here. He is unfortunately somewhat other engaged, and the baton, the royal baton of Doctor Who knowledge, trivia, and lore has been passed upon us, Dan. How are you feeling about this, firstly, without our talisman?
I'm feeling okay. I feel a bit disappointed that he's gone to cosplay in a Welsh castle, but as is the modern way, I can fully see where he's coming from. I feel good. Do you know what? This is a weird dynamic because it's been however many episodes since the first time it's just been you and I.
I know. It's very strange as well. And because I suppose that this podcast has been through a kind of a development of scenes. There was me and Mike, and then there was just Mike. Well, we'll skip over that bit. And then there was you and Mike, and then there was us three, and then I leave for a bit and you come back. It's kind of going through this continual flux of states, but we've never had the chance to like knuckle down into Doctor Who fandom. I mean because we've had our moments, to be fair. I mean, through our shared history of, because believe it or not, folks, me and Dan have known each other quite a long time. And from the Avengers to DC to Lord of the Rings to Back to the Future. Am I missing any?
No, you've covered a lot.
We've covered a lot. And then Doctor Who, where me, you, and Mike. I mean, I don't know if we've ever said this on the podcast. That's kind of, I mean, the one that really sticks in our mind, I guess, is us in your university halls room watching the 50th anniversary.
On a crappy little third-hand television.
On a crappy, which I think, in a way, like it's weird to think that the finale of this season is going to be like in broadcast in cinemas all over the world, and we were watching possibly the biggest episode of Doctor Who historically, anyway.
Yeah.
On like a tiny little, like three blokes just like crammed around a tiny television, losing their mind when they entered with the 1960s, like kind of transitioning and stuff. It's crazy, like really. Yeah, I don't know. It's like it really kind of sticks in our friendship, like Doctor Who, doesn't it? I guess
it's more terrifying that was almost as near as makes no difference 10 years ago, full of hopeful dreams as respective actors.
Yeah,
and here we are.
Here we are. Yeah, I'm still pretty much in a university halls room, given the size. And look, this is actually my wardrobe, folks. You're welcome. Anyway, moving on from that horrible
wing of my house.
So, what did you think? Do you want to start us off?
I can do, yeah. I have notes. Again, for the benefit of those listening and watching, I've just finished watching the episode, so it's fresh in my mind. I've got to start right from the top, the lady in the frame once again. We've seen Susan Twist once more, which we'll get on to, I'm sure, very, very soon. Love the interaction between the Doctor and Rogue when they're looking down the balcony. There's the frown, look, everything else. But absolute comedy. Now, one thing, I know this has been alluded to, I think either you or Mike or the two of you both mentioned it, that all this could be, the entire series could be like a dream kind of state thing, could be like in Ruby's Mites, or like it's her within a TV show. Because the only thing I did notice, and I don't know whether you picked up on this, was about 5 or 10 minutes into the episode, while the Doctor and the Rogue are talking, the orchestra are playing Bad Guy by Billy. Now, I don't know if there's subconscious kind of like jumping through it. We've seen a few times. Maybe it is. But I thought that was quite cool. I want your opinion on this.
Go for it.
He's got a spaceship. He is a very, very charismatic character. He's got a lot of similarities with the Doctor. Do you reckon Rogue will have some kind of spin-off in the Who-niverse?
I mean, that's a great question. It does feel like a character we haven't seen the last of, doesn't it? Like it really does. Like just in terms of the, even his last line with just like "find me" before dropping into like the transportation tunnel thing, and just the kind of the hype that's been around it, and because it's Jonathan Groff, and like I love it when like a new actor comes in who's completely unknown and kind of just smashes it, and you go, wow, like where did they come from, sort of thing. But it is also nice when you do get your sort of high profile cameos, and I just get with all the hype around it. I think it's one of those episodes where they've kind of gone, sort of leave it open-ended, because if it had gone the other way and it had been atrocious, or it just didn't get the reception it did, then maybe they would just go, we can leave it. Do you know what I mean? It was one of them where it was like, oh, we can, like, he's gone forever sort of thing, character, or we can like make more of it. So I feel like it has the potential now to, and knowing Russell, I can't imagine, with this being kind of such a LGBT based episode, and an episode that really has kind of, they're really going in for it this season, and fair play to them with the amount of you know, kind of different things they're entering and really kind of putting on firsthand. Whether it's, you know, Dot and Bubble with the ending there and the kind of the confronting of the racism towards the 15th Doctor, or if it's in, you know, this episode in like Regency. And I think it was really clever the way they talked about scandal. And it was like, you know, honey, we are scandal. I think it's when Shooty says that line and he takes to dance in the dance floor. I thought it was a really slick episode. I thought it was really, it was nice to have like an alien be the word's gone right out of my head, but like the villains of the piece, antagonists, sorry. And I think it was nice to kind of go back to that sort of classic Doctor Who mold of like, we're going to have like aliens. Do you know what I mean? Like these are, and I was worried at first. I was like, oh my God, like, what are these strange owl creatures? But actually, like, I thought they did really well with it. And Indira Varma in particular, like, just committed to it, because it is a bit cheesy and it is a bit kind of, you know, silly. But she really, I think there was one scene where they were like chasing them outside, and she's just so committal to that kind of like, we need to find them now. And it was like, and it's all really stupid. But I think like she got that right. Like she got that level right. I think it was really, really good. But yeah, I think there was a lot, the chemistry was great between the two of them. And I think that it really anchored the episode and kind of went in a way I didn't. And again, like, it's funny, isn't it? Because the Doctor references Ruby as like, oh, it's my best friend. And then like doesn't recognize his best friend when she's in the trap. As in like, he doesn't recognize who it would be. And it kind of shows like it's the blinding of emotions and anger. And, you know, like the Doctor, I'm always interested by this quality of like the Doctor is not human, but they really try and draw out the human.
Well, it's funny you mention that, because I don't know I mean, again, if those of you who've been watching the series so far, I've already made a comment on this a few times, but once again, we have had another episode of Doctor Who this series where the Doctor is crying. And I
yeah, you had picked that up, didn't you?
An episode of Runs where the Doctor's always been this kind of stoic, fearless kind of character, and obviously all out of previous iterations. We've kind of seen this very more human, very sensitive kind of side to him that we've maybe not seen in quite a while. And speaking of Doctors, when the Doctor's scanned, that's the first time in a very long time, I think since the 50th, am I right in thinking that, where we've seen basically all the faces of the other Doctors in the same
really, really I'm really glad you brought this up. Really interesting moment in that scene.
Yeah.
What was really interesting is there was a big question about, because there's a lot of Doctors included in there, and there's one in particular I want to come to, and it might not be the one you're thinking of, but it might be. But before we get on to that, there's Ruth, or the fugitive Doctor. And what was interesting was people were kind of going, where is she placed? Like, where is she placed in and amongst the timeline of all the other Doctors? Because there's been a lot of ideas that have kind of gone forward about her being a Doctor that preceded William Hartnell's first Doctor. And that's kind of been the assumption, but it's never been confirmed. And what I thought was really interesting was among that, the digital circle, they had mixed all the numbers up.
Yeah.
I feel like Russell had kind of sidestepped that question a little bit, where it's like, I'm not saying that he doesn't know, maybe he does, but just to kind of not be drawn into anything or not kind of accidentally confirm theories, it was like, we're going to jumble up all the numbers. We're going to have like 15 and 13 and 9 and 6 and 4. But did you notice, if you counted all of them up, did you notice an extra face?
I did. Who is that face? Do we know?
Because so it was really interesting. I did know of this, but it completely like had gone out of my memory completely, because I haven't thought about it in ever. And what's interesting is up until this point, it was non-canon, but it making this appearance in this scene probably makes it canon, because it's appeared in the main TV series. So that one of the figures who appeared on the screen was Richard E. Grant, who in Doctor Who has previously played the Great Intelligence, and I want to come back to the Great Intelligence actually, but that's not actually the character I think they're referring to. I think they're referring to a character that was known as the Schalke Doctor. Now, the Schalke Doctor was an online web series that came out in 2003, where Richard E. Grant lent his voice to play the Doctor, and it happened after the Doctor Who movie, but happened before the 2005 reboot. So there were kind of unconfirmed reports that was like, oh, is this the 9th Doctor? Like, it's an online animated web series, but it got nowhere near the traction the TV show did. And it was cancelled, I think, after one series. And then when 2005 started up with Russell T Davies, it was considered non-canon. So they just went, it's not part of it. And people went, cool, fine, whatever. But the fact that that Doctor has now been shown in this is like mind-blowing, because that almost confirms its place.
Yeah.
And then you kind of go, well, that is placed between the 8th and the 9th Doctor. So what does that mean? Because there's so much like strange, because obviously you have Paul McGann's Doctor, and then you have the War Doctor, which was the Chosen regeneration with John Hurt, and then you get Christopher Eccleston. But now that you've got Richard E. Grant, and now that we know, and again, you know, I've kind of put out there that I'm not totally on board with the Timeless Child arc or when it first happened, but if that's where they're wanting to go with it, like, I feel like, you know, you might as well take an idea, and even if it isn't fully formed at first, you should just go with it and go, right, this is the new direction. We're gonna like work this now. And I feel like if they're bringing that Doctor and other Doctors into it, it really creates interesting pockets in the timeline of like, well, if you're now canon, where do you fit? And will we see you again? And how have you been there before? And it's really interesting. Or like you say, spin-offs. Is there going to be another Richard E. Grant spin-off?
I was going to say this. Do you think now, as we're approaching the end of the series, which has kind of come along very fast as Doctor Who fans, this is a very short series. Do you reckon, because one of my assumptions was that maybe because I've already shot and edited season 2, that we get season 2 early, so we kind of get like a double season in 1 year, which is one.
Possibly.
Or do you reckon because of how early it's ending, this is where we see the Whoniverse really establish itself, and now we're going to see like Richard E. Grant come back. We maybe see more with David Tennant. We maybe see all these kind of now spin-off variations of it fill in the gap between now and Christmas.
Yeah, I think that's entirely possible. I think it really is, and it would be so cool if they did like another web series with Richard E. Grant to like touch the 2003 one and just went, we're going to follow that, or like, well, you know how like, I don't know, like Lego were really good at this. Like Lego had that idea when Lego were going to go bust in like the 80s or whatever, and they decided like, we've got to save the company, and people were like, oh well, we're going to remarket it, or we're, you know, in terms of how it's become this phenomenon it has, and now it's gone into films, it's gone into music, it's gone into video games, it's gone into books, it's gone into all sorts of different crafts. And I feel like it'd be cool for Doctor Who to do that, where it's like, well, you could do like web series. They already do Big Finish audiobooks, but you could do like animations, you could do cartoon, you could do all of these different spheres and go into different places, because that would be something different. Do you know what I mean? Or if it was like a really, maybe you could have like a really child-friendly version of Doctor Who that was like an animated series, or you could have like, you know, the Dark Knight graphic novels of the 80s, where it's like, this is Doctor Who, but really dark and after 10 p.m. Do you know what I mean? Or whatever. I don't think they will do that last one, but whatever, it like to go into different spheres and worlds with it.
And the interesting thing is, Russell T Davies, this isn't untouched territory, is it? We've had the Sarah Jane Adventures, we've had Torchwood, we've had so many different variations that towards the end of the 10th Doctor's first appearance, or David Tennant's first appearance, we saw them all kind of come back together and kind of like find each other off in the nicest possible way. So I think with the fact that you've got the BBC and Disney kind of hand in hand, Disney's kind of experienced expanding universes, bigger universes. The fact that Russell T Davies isn't like a stranger when it comes to stuff like that, I think we're seeing little teasers of a far picture, because Russell T Davies is a very intelligent writer, and any good writer, it's a bit, what's the phrase? It's like Chekhov's gun. Or am I completely?
Yes. Is it? Yeah. Oh God, you've put us on the spot here now, and I feel like as actors, it's like, oh God, is it Chekhov's gun?
Yeah, just please just spam the comments and just say I'm a moron. So Chekhov's gun is the kind of phrase where like a writer will, or an actor or a performance, it will reference something that seems very insignificant in the moment, but is then referred to once again and has a greater impact towards the end of a scene, the end of a story, end of a narrative. And I think what we're starting to see now, in much the same way Susan Twist making reappearances, is something else that's going to go beyond the series that we're currently watching. I think there's great potential there, and I think if ever there was a time for the Whoniverse to really flourish, you want to establish the show first, a bit like Iron Man. That's the only way I can describe it.
Yeah, definitely.
And then you go, right, how do we build upon this? And I think we're going to see, if not, I don't think we'll see a lot, but I think we'll at least see one at a push, maybe 2 new concepts come along between now and Christmas.
Yeah. No, I think definitely. Well, I think that we know that the war between the land and the sea is coming. We know that's coming. So that's already pretty much been announced, and it's already been referenced to in 73 Yards. And I think there's definitely going to be other series. I think we're definitely looking at series with other companions. Like, obviously, we've got Bonnie Langford returning next week. who incidentally, a piece of news I was going to give, but I might as well mention it now, has just released a murder mystery book about Doctor Who. So this isn't any kind of free promotion or whatever, but I just found that out now, so that's pretty cool. But it's like, yeah, I think there's obviously so many different companions, so many different potential stories you could tell. I don't know if Torchwood will come back, but maybe something in that realm as well. Or maybe it wouldn't surprise me if they do a series about UNIT, because Kate Lethbridge-Stewart is getting so much traction, and I feel really bad. I can't remember her name, but the actress who plays her is so good, and I feel like it wouldn't surprise me if they gave UNIT their own sort of story.
The weird thing I've kind of always particularly in the last couple of months, that I've always kind of seen UNIT as Doctor Who's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Mm-hmm.
It has so many similarities there. I think that they'd be mad to kind of expand upon that.
Yeah.
So another point I wanted to bring up is obviously when the Doctor invite Rogue into the TARDIS. We have that breakthrough moment. I lost him. The Rogue lost a male kind of accomplice, and Doctor says he lost everyone. And there is a lot of tension there straight away, isn't there? There's clearly admiration, a lot of love. And then it just goes completely mad. I don't know about you, but this feels like, I know you mentioned before about it feeling like classic Doctor Who, but it almost gets to the point where like halfway through, it's almost like you go, oh God, we've only got 20 minutes. Now we've got to make it all make sense.
Yeah. There is always that
and this is classic Who in the sense that it's just everything getting tied up really quickly. Just the fact it's cosplay, I think that's going to tie in so much.
So funny. I have to be honest, I did laugh out loud when they said that. Not in like a oh my God really way, but just in a way that was like ha. It's like because I think it is, and I think it was a really neat way of them being able to go about their business, like the Childers. Yeah, just like and there was quite it's a bit silly, but they did silly well. Because actually, like the scene at the beginning, right at the beginning, where they do the transformation of stealing like their costume or the person as a costume.
Yeah.
It was quite gruesome, actually, like the way that it was like full electric shock treatment and then just like this corpse that was left. But all around that was quite silly. So I think like they did quite a good job of sort of grounding that, and the cosplay thing fits in quite nicely. And so many fans in like Doctor Who and Comic-Con, that was definitely one for like the Comic-Con fans. Do you know what I mean? Where it was like, we all know you've dressed up with Tom Baker's scarf and you've put a bow tie on and there's a fez, and do you know what I mean? There's all these things. So I think that was really, really good. Something else, I saw a tweet as well that I thought would have been really important. Like, because obviously, like, we're watching this as three, as far as I'm aware, like heterosexual guys kind of watching this scene for the first time. And I saw a really awesome tweet, which was by someone who I think identifies as gay. And they were saying, like, it's so good to see this now, but imagine what I'd have been feeling like if I saw this at 14. And I feel like for all of and for like, that's so true, like for all this generation that are coming through, who maybe are questioning about themselves or kind of feelings or kind of seeing their own place in the world and relationships they have with numerous people, to see that on screen and to see it so unashamedly, where it was like, it was, it wasn't like a peck on the lips. It was a proper kiss. Like it was a proper moment where these two men connected. And I think that, for people potentially coming through, do you know what I mean, of a younger generation, or not necessarily people in any time of life, just to see that must be such a fucking just kick-ass moment where it's like, yes, do you know what I mean? And when we're unashamed of it, and it kind of paid off, I imagine, and saw as like a reward where you had that moment, the kiss was going to happen, the TARDIS makes a noise, the Doctor's like, got to sort that out, like, can't have this happening, and then you're like, oh, okay, it's not going to happen, and then it gets to the end of the episode and there is payoff, and there's like deserved payoff, So I just imagine, like, just seeing that tweet, I was like, that's really good to think, like that might really kickstart something for people. And just as well, like the chemistry was, on fire. Like I was watching the two of them and being like, okay, guys, I think we're all feeling something here. I'm just gonna press pause on BBC, get myself a cup of tea, maybe chamomile. Need to just calm down here. But it was really, really, really good, really, really good, I thought. And Jonathan Groff is great as well. I was expecting him to sing, I'm not going to lie. So maybe mark it down a little bit for the fact there was no Jonathan Groff singing.
But hey, we did get more dancing.
More,
much dancing.
so much dance. So how do you feel? So I've seen a few little things about. There's a lot of Bridgerton references, and on the other end, like I have seen some people kind of with reviews just gone like, enough with the Bridgerton. Like, can we have an 1813-esque episode where that exists in its own thing? It doesn't have to just be like everything's Bridgerton and everything's kind of glammed up or kind of like uber hypertension of, you know, kind of everything between people and scandal and all that. And yeah, how what do you think about? Do you think like the Bridgerton thing was a bit overbearing, or did you just like think, no, it's just a fun episode and whatever?
Yeah, I think it was just a fun, daft, stand out or standalone episode. And I think, I don't know about you, but I've noticed because there's so many like pop culture references or more pop culture references in this series than I remember there being in any prior one, because it's always kind of like, suppose the BBC, it's kind of like, let's be impartial. You can't really like specifically name drop certain things. The fact that when the Doctor lets Rogue through start singing like Willy Wonka, like "Come with me," and it's the fact that I think,
I forgot about that. Yeah, that's true.
there's so many bits in it that make the argument of Ruby potentially being in a dream where it's more of her subconscious and her kind of life playing out, because there's so many little bits that, like, I don't know, they're just a bit odd to see in Doctor Who, but because there's so many of them, they've got to be there for a reason. Not just there because it's a bit more open source, because it's Disney and everything else, because they're proper on the nose references to like modern music or artists or stuff that Ruby would have seen or listened to or watched growing up.
Yeah.
That it can't just be purely coincidental, particularly if it's set in the 1800s, particularly the Doctor within the same breath has said, don't mention tarmac. 1902 was a big mistake. And then you've got music from like 5 years ago. You've got him singing this. You've got Ruby using modern language, which again is just maybe a mistake, but it's too coincidental. And Russell T Davies, again, is an intelligent enough writer that there wouldn't be some kind of payoff at the very end of this series. Susan Twister makes an appearance.
Yeah, possibly. I hadn't thought of that.
Because if she's kind of coming in and obviously there's no explanation, she's somehow interlinks and intertwined in these things, are we kind of getting or missing out on these potential filler or understanding bits of information because she's an enigma and she's kind of caused those gaps to form?
Well, I tell you what, she's definitely an enigma because
Yes.
Enigma.
Because I got full on, I don't know whether anyone else listening or watching this got goosebumps. I was covered head to toe in goosebumps at that teaser. Oh my God.
Yeah, it was just the way that, and like, it's the first time as well where they have, it's not a mistake. They were like, there's this woman, and we're all like watching our TV go, yeah, there's this fucking woman. Who is she?
We've been talking about it for 5 weeks.
We've been bringing her up for 5 weeks. You haven't said anything. And she seems to be really scared. But then there was this brief moment of this demon-like figure that looked a little bit like her, but also didn't. And one name that appears to have come back into the fold is Sutek, who I believe has only appeared live action wise anyway in one appearance, and that was with Tom Baker in the Pyramids of Mars. From what I can gather and what I can remember, Sutek is like a godlike all universal being that basically their purpose is to go around and destroy life wherever they see it. In a way, I kind of guess they're a sort of Thanos-esque character, but they're not. But Thanos's thing was always to be like half and half and like balance in the world, whereas Sutek is like, no, fuck that noise. We're getting rid of everything. And there's also been, you know, the god element is obviously a big kind of giveaway. There's also been the thing of Susan Triad. If you reshape the words of Susan Triad, you get Sutek. And I think that, or Susan Tech, sorry, not Susan Tyak, Susan Tech, you get Triad. But since then, Russell has done like a little teaser for the next episode. As he does like a 60-second teaser for Doctor Who Unleashed. And he said, go back and watch the giggle. And he was like, there's a little throwaway line that units say to Donna about their new triad system. And he says, and that is going to have a big part into everything that's about to unfold. So obviously it sounds like the system that UNIT are using, and we know that UNIT are going to appear in the next episode, there's something wrong with the system they're using, or there's something that's not right.
There's not really been any further explanation or reason as to why Ruby is seeing snow, or the snow's falling in random things.
It might just be snow, Dan.
It could just be snow, and it'll be very annoyed if it was. But I think what could happen. Not that I'll maybe. Do I want it to happen? I feel like it'd probably be the most Doctor Who of all the scenarios to happen. But unless it's throughout all of this, the reason we're seeing Susan Twist appear as often as we are is because maybe Ruby's unconscious and Susan's her mum. I don't know, and she's kind of reaching through the ether and all this kind of stuff, and kind of trying to reach out to her, and kind of like, I know it's a real cop out, but maybe like I'm just gonna say maybe Susan Twist is Ruby's mum. I don't know.
Could be. No, genuinely could be. Could be.
Again, haven't seen her in a while. Don't know what she looks like. Hence why she has all these different appearances across all these different time zones.
Or
it's like
maybe, major plot twist. Ruby is Susan Twist's mum.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were going to say like David Tennant.
I've never seen someone just been like, fucking idiot. Anyway.
But I think whatever it is, it's big enough to warrant a back-to-back cinema release.
Yeah.
And they would not go that hard at these final two episodes. There wasn't going to be one hell of a payoff.
Yes, that's true. Let's talk about that quickly then. First time that's ever happened, like a proper, and they might have done a cinema thing for the 50th, but in terms of this being part of like the actual, do you know what I mean? Like release or part of a finale, they're really kind of, you know, saying this is huge. This is going to change the game. Yeah. And do you think that's kind of, sort of Disney flexing its muscles? And do you think it's going to be more like a movie than it is a TV, like in terms of the way it's shot, in terms of the way it's done? Because obviously shooting for TV and shooting for film are like wildly different things.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite possible.
I'm wondering how cinematic the last episode will be and such.
Yeah, because the only thing I can think of is, as far as maybe you're aware, as Mike has told us, those two episodes have not been shown back to back on TV.
No, yeah.
One on the following day. So, and the thing is, if you look at the cinema running times, that final episode is nearly an hour and a half.
Yeah, so it is a film, really, isn't it?
It's going to be a mini movie, so I feel like it probably will end up being like a 2-part kind of like. They'll probably end up editing it into the cinema as like one like 2-hour film. It'll probably roll straight into the next. It's got to be big. I think it's going to be very big. Will it be the same sort of largeness? I've just got a flashback then of like, is it the day today where it goes, it's bigger than big, it's large. It's bigger than humongous, it's large. And but I think with this, Disney wouldn't. I don't think Disney would do it for this, because if they wanted something big, they'd have done it for the actual 60th.
Yeah,
you know, those three in the cinema anyway, because they're big films and David Tennant's back. You would have made a killing off those anyway.
Yeah,
but it has to be something pretty big if it's going to justify the costs and everything else of it being put into cinemas.
Anyway, speaking of fantasy, I would like to draw your attention to this week. Unfortunately, as you've probably all guessed by now, Mike isn't here, and Mike normally leads this section. So one of these is a truth, and 3 of these are a lie. And your job, as always, Dan, is to figure out which one is the truth. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So this is Doctor Who meets Greek mythology. Here we go. I will try and get through these as succinctly as I can, but I will say them again for you so that you can get a grasp basically for which one is which.
All right.
Here is the first one. The Doctor once fought a villain called Chin, god of self-sacrifice and sexual restraint. Chin was semi-decapitated to just above the mouth, from where it would speak to the Doctor. Holding the rest of its head in its hands, it would spurt the arteries from its neck to feed its loyal followers in sacrifice and devotion. That's number 1. Number 2, the 4th Doctor once met the goddess of fertility and war called Anna of Tar in the underworld. Having been banished there, she spends the episode trying to trick the Doctor's companion, Sarah Jane Smith, into walking through 7 gates, where she must lose a personal memory every time. Anna then attempts to marry Sarah Jane to sign a human blood pact transfer, immortalizing the god in the human dimension. Number 3. Kronos, the chronivore, is the personification of time and known as a time monster. The 3rd Doctor notes how they are good at swallowing a life. They are summoned by the Master at the fall of Atlantis as the Master attempts to enslave the Mad Titan. Kronos appears as a giant translucent female face in a somewhat similar style to MODOK from the Marvel Comics. Kronos turns the table on the Master, asking the Doctor whether they should destroy the Master. The Doctor simply says, nah, and the Master escapes. Or, number 4.
Okay.
The 6th Doctor was meant to go up against Nepus, the god of gardens, who, according to production notes at the BBC, was designed with a small head, a small body, but had giant sexual organs, including puffy nipples and a space hopper, which he would bounce around at speed to represent an oversized cock and balls. He controlled an army of military garden gnomes with whom he would march on the natural forest of the earth to steal and root out its energy and resources. So, Dan, there's your 4. Would you like a quick repeat of all of them?
I think the audience would love nothing more than repeat these.
So number one, you had a villain called Chin, who was a god of self-sacrifice and sexual restraint, who would spurt arteries from his neck to feed his followers. Number 2 was Anna of Tar, who tried to trick Sarah Jane Smith into marrying her and losing a personal memory every time she went through a ring. Number 3 was Kronos the Chronivore, who had a giant translucent female face and asked the Doctor if they should destroy the Master, and the Doctor was like, I don't think I should. Or number 4, the 6th Doctor was meant to go up against Nepus, who was tiny but had giant sexual organs with a space hopper that had an oversized cock and balls. So, Dan, talk me through the board.
Right. So, I don't think it's Chin, because the thought of a character using its, what was it again? Its arteries.
Yeah. So the arteries that were like from the decapitated, the blood was just like spurting out.
Even for Doctor Who, that is far too gruesome. So I'm going to go no for Chin.
Okay.
Anna of Tar, I feel like does have some kind of like legitimacy there. I feel like that's something where she go through 7 things, have to lose a memory and all that kind of stuff. I feel like very much down the route of Doctor Who old. Kronos with a giant female face. I'm going to get rid of that option. And as much as I want this to be true, and knowing my friggin' luck, it probably will be, Nepus and almost cock and balls being used like an almost tricycle cum segue. As hilarious a creation as that is, mate, and I thank you for taking a creative writing degree at some point.
Dan, no such thing. Honestly, Nepus, famous in Greek mythology. I think within the 3rd generation of honestly nothing to do with me, mate.
So in that case, by process of elimination. Side note: did we find out where we were up to with scores?
No, we didn't. But for the next week, we're going to find. I think it's pretty close. I do think it's pretty close.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to go with option number 2, Anna of Tar.
Is that your final answer?
That is my final answer.
Okay. Well, let me put you out of your misery with a couple of the others.
Okay.
I'm not even going to try and claim that Chin was anywhere near true. It is way too violent to me in Doctor Who. But I thought, I was like, so actually, Chin, so all of these gods and stuff that have been made up apart from the truth. But I was like taking things from things that I kind of heard of in like ridiculous Greek mythology. So I know there is a god that does have that is like they are decapitated and they're like they feed their followers through the blood of nectar and stuff, and I was like, that's ridiculous, that's going in there. But you're right, it's not that one. The 6th Doctor, Nepus. Yeah, I was particularly glad with coming up with Nepus, I'm not gonna lie, but yeah, sadly there was no such god-like creature in Doctor Who with a space hopper and a cock of balls. And that's very much one for the Michael Priestley crowd, because you can't have one of these options without a cock and balls. So that leaves us. You picked number 2. Didn't go for Kronos, the Chronivore.
No.
Who was a time monster, good at swallowing a life. Kronos, obviously. I don't know whether you got the idea of Kronos being from the actual god, the Titan, Kronos, who used to eat his children. Do you know the story about? And then he was fed a rock. She gave him a rock. So that's who that was based off.
Okay.
And I can tell you, Dan, that was actually the truth.
No.
Yeah.
Oh,
I hate to tell you, to be fair, the Anna of Tar one I thought was I could see why you went for that, because I thought you know what will sucker him? Sarah Jane Smith. I'm going to throw a companion in there, and I bet you anything he'll go for it. And I've got you there, mate. Unfortunately, but it is true. Kronos the Chronivore appeared in an episode with John Pertwee in the Third Doctor with the original Master and him as. I think it might be one of the first episodes the Master's ever in Doctor Who, and basically he tries to release this crystal and breaks this crystal, and it releases the god Kronos, who appears to them as this giant female face. If you want to watch it on YouTube, you can go and see it. It's ridiculous, but she appears as this like beautiful like kind of Greek goddess with like gold eyeshadow and stuff, but it's just this massive face. And every time I watch it now, I'm like, oh my god, it's Modak from like Marvel. But yeah, that is the truth. So sadly, Dan, not this time, but maybe next week we can catch you up. Cool. So before we head, Colin Baker, the Sixth Doctor, celebrated his 81st birthday the other day. So very happy birthday to him. I feel like maybe he's starting to get a bit more love in retrospect. Because I think his Doctor was the one that always got bullied just by like reviews and critics and fans and stuff. And I feel like it was because the show was reaching a point where like the writing was really suffering and like budget cuts and stuff. But I feel like, you know, in retrospect, all of these things kind of, they do come back. I don't know if you've ever watched any of his episodes. Obviously, one of them is very important to me in particular because it's the birth of the Valeyard. He is the Doctor in Trial of the Time Lord. So obviously, I've got big love for that. But yeah, have you ever seen any Colin Baker episodes?
Clips. I've seen clips. I don't think I've ever seen a full episode.
Yeah.
Way through.
Yeah, I think in one of his episodes, one of the TARDISes is a grandfather clock. You know,
of course it is.
Of course it is.
Oh, so before we do that, one quick question we've got to ask, because Mike would have mentioned it during this episode, but he hasn't because he's not here, because he's very selfish.
He is incredibly selfish.
He's got tickets for the cinema release of these two episodes. Are you going to a cinema release?
So I have not currently booked tickets. However, I feel like I've got to.
Is there a
so
temptation?
I think by the time we come back to do the next podcast, I think I will probably have booked tickets. Who will I go with? I don't know. Probably no one. It'll be me in wearing a bow tie and a scarf. I think maybe one of four people. No, I think I will go. I think I definitely will, because I feel like they've been building it up so much that you have to see it at the cinema because it's very cinematic. So
yeah, definitely.
Go and see it at the cinema. Do you know what? Yeah, and the other thing to mention is Mike's not here, but we've got through it. In fact, I think this has been a pretty good podcast. Who doesn't have a podcast? I'll tell you, Mike, because he's been fired. Anyway, it's been lovely time. He hasn't been fired. He will be back next week. We love Mike.
No, we are in person. We're human after all. We want to do it properly.
We are human. Dan, it's been lovely. So I will see you next week, I think. What do we do now? This is the awkward bit where do we have to ring Mike to get him to end the recording?
We've got to do an outro, haven't we? Do we do the outro now? No, we'll do the outro now.
Do we do the outro now, and then we have that awkward bit where we're on our phones going, Mike, can you end the recording, please?
I think that's exactly what Mike would want.
Do you think?
I think so.
Okay. Do you want to? How do you want to do this?
I don't know. I've never. I can't remember ending one of these.
This is my first time.
Okay. So.
Be gentle with me.
Put that away. Thank you so much for listening.
Knee puss. Get out of here!
Giant cock and balls.
Until I'm being attacked by a space hopper. Sorry, go.
Thank you so much for listening and for watching. And please follow us on our socials at Who Doesn't Pod. I promise you, we'll actually start using them. We have been crap when it comes to socials, but we will make up for it in time for the finale. Jerome, thank you so much.
Thank you very much from me, Susan Triad. It's been a pleasure as always. We will see you next week. Myself, the lovely Mike, and the lovely Dan. Bye for now.
Toodaloo.
If you like this YouTube video, please consider liking,
sharing,
and subscribing.